Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here, coming to you with my review for the first round of the 2026 NBA playoffs. It took a fair bit of time, but we are done, we are through, and everything is in the books. In the East, there were 4 separate 7-game series, 2 separate 3-1 recoveries, and a really tight 3-3 battle through 6 until Game 7, essentially alternating how things went. There was a little bit of a concern early on in another series before, well, the favourite ran over the top and all of a sudden looked like they could be the team to beat. In the other side of things, in the Western Conference, well, it was, well, pretty much a one-sided affair all the way through. We had a sweep, a gentleman's sweep, and 2 6-game series. Only one genuine seeded upset, another one with some drama coming out of it as always. But nonetheless, it was quite an interesting first round of the playoffs. From an Eastern standpoint, one of the more memorable opening rounds in recent playoff history. So let's get to it. Let's get to the review of the first round of the 2026 NBA playoffs. First series we'll start with is the Eastern Conference first round matchup of the 4th seed and the 5th seed. The Cleveland Cavaliers defeating the Toronto Raptors in 7 games. And that was an interesting affair right there. Cleveland getting out to a 2-0 lead in the first game, 126-113. Second game, 115-105. Toronto getting it done at home, 126-104 in Game 3, and then 93-89 in Game 4. Cleveland with a 5-point win in Game 5. Looked like they were going to wrap it up in 6 games, but Toronto with a miracle shot dropping, massive shot dropping for them there in that one to send it to a 7th and final game where Cleveland were able to get that done 114-102. So a really big finish there for that one. A really interesting series, a really competitive series, and one that will have Toronto looking pretty proud at their efforts. For me, I thought the best player in this series for Cleveland was Donovan Mitchell. Really nice series for him. Not a great series, but a nice series, something that was, enough for him to get it done, and enough for him to keep it interesting, that's for sure. But nonetheless, Cleveland getting it done over the top, getting over the top there of Toronto. Mitchell, 23.1 points, 4.9 rebounds, 3 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.3 blocks on 2.7 turnovers. Shot 43.8 from the field, 33.3 from deep, and 87.5 from the free throw line. Again, nearly wrapped this one up in 6, but it was that RJ Barrett long 3-point bomb in the final seconds of Game 6 that sent it to a Game 7, and a very competitive series in total. That was 3 points for me coming out of this series. Number 1, another second round for the playoffs for the Cavaliers, and they go into a playoff series now against Detroit that very much could be in their favour because they do have the experience. Now, that also is on the proviso that some of the other stars for Detroit don't turn up as they haven't been. It also is on the proviso that some of the Cleveland players certainly turn up. The question is, can they take advantage of that experience versus Detroit? Now, I say that knowing that Jarrett Allen had a really big Game 7 to close things out. He now has a lot of playoff experience under his belt. Donovan Mitchell, a known participant and someone who's been around playoff sport a number of years now, particularly as the leader. I've got no question about them. I think Evan Mobley can contribute, and I have liked the bench production for the Cavs. My only question does come down to that final question there, and that is James Harden, and that is that he cannot go missing in the series. He was probably their second best player all over, but the question that I really have is, can he perform when it matters the most? He isn't always there in those big games, and that can be the ultimate concern. I mean, 18-6-3 in his final appearance there in the first round. 3 of 9 shooting. And that wasn't necessarily the worst game that he had in that series either. So for Cleveland, it's going to be a matter of them taking advantage of that playoff experience. It's going to be a matter of them trying to get beyond that second round, because that's when questions of the franchise will be asked. And of course, what can James Harden do as far as stepping up and getting his team, assisting his team to the conference finals? over to our second series, and that was the number 3 seed New York Knicks getting it done against the number 6 seed Atlanta Hawks in 4 games. This was a real split along the way. New York having the home court advantage. They split their first 2 games 1-1. Won the first game 113-102 and lost the second by a point to Atlanta 107-106. They then lost Game 3 in Atlanta 109-108. CJ McCollum at that point on a really big tear. Was having a really good series himself. And it looked like Atlanta, they're at home, they're playing good basketball. Have New York managed to defeat themselves? Well, New York certainly answered. They won the next 3 games from there and pretty much controlled the game outright. Really had a real kick in the backside in Game 3. Managed to turn it around Games 4 through 6. They won Game 4, 114-98. Game 5, 126-97. And absolutely obliterated them in Game 6, 140-89. And that is all the series wrote there. Some really good contributors for the Knicks. Jalen Brunson with a nice series. OG Anunoby with a really nice series. And I almost had OG Anunoby as my player of the series. But I just had to look at some of the different options that Karl-Anthony Towns was bringing. And I think he was really the difference in this series. And that's why I had him as the player of the series. Now, I don't think you can go wrong by choosing OG Anunoby. I certainly don't think you could, particularly on the defensive end. And we know what Jalen Brunson brings on the offensive end, but I just think that Karl-Anthony Towns was the big difference maker in this one, and I can make a genuine case that he was the best player in 2 of their 4 wins. For the Big Cat, 18.7 points, 11.3 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.7 steals, along with 1.7 blocks on 3.2 turnovers, 50-40-90 club shooting, 56.9 from the field, 44.4 from deep, and 92.7 from the free throw line. Again, the Knicks hit their stride after that Game 3 defeat. Back-to-back 1-point losses. I mean, you're talking about a series that very well could have been a sweep. It was that close over those Games 2 and Games 3. They weren't able to do it, but did get it done. Again, the historic win in Game 6 to really secure victory and really set the tone for them moving into the second round going up against Philadelphia. That's exactly what they need. At the time of recording, we can confirm, obviously, New York got the win in that first game, so that really does set the tone for that series. But again, they really needed to do it to really kickstart the series. And again, question now is, can they continue to overcome that star power of the 76ers, taking on a Paul George, a Joel Embiid, a Tyrese Maxey, a VJ Edgecombe, even a Tobias Harris has had a really good playoff run at the moment and closed out a big... Sorry, not Tobias Harris. What am I talking about? Please ignore me on that one there. We'll go to Detroit when we eventually get to it. But... just the massive series that Philadelphia had. It's going to take a lot for New York to try and slow that down. We'll see exactly what they can do. But again, able to really lift after that rough start. They very well could have been a 4-0 sweep, but they weren't. They were able to control it over the last 3 games, get a historic win in Game 6. It's now a matter of them managing that star power against Philadelphia. Can they do it? It's going to be the question, because this is a Philadelphia team that certainly will not let it slide if they are not playing good basketball. Speaking of Philadelphia, the first of 2 teams to recover from a 3-1 series deficit in the first round of the playoffs. There have been less than 20 occasions in league history where this has happened, and it was the first 3-1 recovery that we've seen in almost 6 seasons. So really big effort by Philadelphia there. Defeated Boston 4-3. And it was a series that very well could have swung very much in favour of Boston over the closing few games. But Philadelphia really cranked up the Jets, really showed what their star power is, how their star power works, and in turn how crucial it is to have health on your side. Boston won the first game, no contest, 123-91. Philadelphia returned served, similar sort of contest, 111-97. From there, Boston won Game 3, 108-100, and dominated Game 4, 128-96. But Philadelphia answering the call, holding Boston to 100 or less in their last 3 games. 113-97 in Game 5, 106-93 in Game 6, and almost let it slip in Game 7, but were able to hold on and get the victory, 109-100. Plenty of good contributors across the board for Philadelphia in this series. Again, you've only got to look at someone like Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, VJ Edgecombe, Kelly Oubre had his moments. and Joel Embiid, when he was healthy, able to get the job done as well. But I thought Maxey was their best player in the series. 26.9 points, 4.9 rebounds, 6.6 assists, 1 steal and 0.6 blocks on 1.3 turnovers. 46.4 from the field, 41.8 from deep, and 96.2 from the free throw line. For Philly, it was their first playoff win against the Boston Celtics since 1982, the year they went to the finals and lost to the Lakers of Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's how long it's been since they managed to defeat the Boston Celtics in the playoff series. That is a long time. That is a big hoodoo to have hanging over your head. They've managed to break that now. They've managed to get some success. Now, you can certainly ask whether health is a key question for them. You can also ask whether health is a key factor in them winning the series. Jason Tatum out with a calf injury in Game 7. As I mentioned, with the 3-1 series recovery to win in 7. First time since the Western Conference semi-finals in the bubble of 2020, where the Nuggets were able to complete the recovery there. It's the first time since that particular series that a 3-1 return has happened. And again, health will be a major factor to defeat New York. Now, they are down a game currently in that series. New York riding high after defeating Atlanta and really making the most of that series, essentially having 6 games where 2 of them were separated by a point and they were the ones they lost. So for New York, they've certainly got the advantage as far as having a game rest and certainly being, not taken to the edge, so to speak, as far as being battered and bruised from a competitive standpoint. You would think they're going to have the advantage. For Philly, it's going to come down to what Paul George and Joel Embiid are able to do by avoiding the doctor's office and getting the job done. So they're going to be the real big questions for me. What sort of health are you going to get out of Philadelphia? If they are healthy, what sort of production are you going to get out of their stars? And on top of that, can they continue to build momentum and look towards a conference final? Big series coming up between those two. Again, New York with the 1-0 lead so far, but that certainly doesn't mean that this series is over. And finally, we move on to a second 3-1 recovery in these playoffs, and it happened the following day. The Detroit Pistons, the number 1 60-win seed, recovering in a 7-game battle, you would say, against the Orlando Magic, winning 4-3. Cade Cunningham proving to be the difference maker in this one. The only player, in my opinion, for Detroit that consistently stood up in this series. Tobias Harris certainly had his games, and I did mention him a little earlier in the video by accident. But Tobias Harris certainly had his games, really big contributions from him, particularly in Game 7. But when you compare it to the likes of Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren, Duncan Robinson, Isaiah Stewart, some of these guys that were bigger contributors throughout the year, you really have to factor in that he has carried quite a load to get the job done. Going over the series overall, Orlando won Game 1, 112-101. Detroit, Game 2, 98-83. And then it was Orlando, Games 3 and 4, 113-105 and 94-88 respectively. Detroit with a lot of work to get the job done from there. 116-109 in Game 5, 93-79 in Game 6, and that was just ridiculous the way that they were able to restrict scoring in that second half to get the win on that one there. You've only got to look at the quarter-by-quarter breakdown, holding Orlando to 19 points in the second half alone to get the win there, and then winning in Game 7, 116-94. I touched on Cade Cunningham before. 32.4 points, 5.7 rebounds, 7.1 assists, 0.9 steals and 0.9 blocks, 5.9 turnovers, quite high, but when you look at the usage rate Cade Cunningham had to have, it's probably a big reason, number 1, that it went 7 games, and certainly number 2, the reason that they actually won the series. 46.2 from the field, 39.6 from deep. I am liking the improved outside shooting, particularly in the postseason, and 83.8 from the free throw line. Again, Cade knowing how to step it up in the postseason, absolutely crucial. Again, outside of Tobias Harris, there were only 2 other double-digit scorers, both averaging 10 points for those that played all 7. Jalen Duren is not going to be able to be absent in this next series for Detroit when they take on Cleveland, because Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley will eat them alive if they're not careful. Now, I do understand when you look at Philadelphia that they do have when you look at Detroit, that they do have some options as far as going inside is concerned, particularly with an Isaiah Stewart to try and battle that there. You also have someone like a Paul Reed who can substitute through, but at the same time, you can't afford a guy who's on the verge of getting a really big contract and floating around as an all-star this year to be underperforming. You just can't have that. And of course, the second 3-1 comeback these playoffs already. The Eastern Conference has been a nightmare to try and predict. And of course, that does come down to the fact that a lot of these teams were fighting at times for the first seed and could seed anywhere between 2 and 6 on any given night. So a real big battle happening out there in the East. Again, the key is going to be seeing Cade Cunningham stepping up consistently and trying to prove things wrong and trying to improve Detroit. Again, this is a team 2 years ago that won 17 games. They're now 60 wins and the number 1 seed in the East. But on top of that, they must have everyone else come along. They cannot have any free customers on this next leg of the train ride. Otherwise, it is going to derail and derail badly. We now move over to the Western Conference and we move over to the 4 seed Los Angeles Lakers defeating the 5th seed Houston Rockets 4-2 in a series that was headlined for its absences as much as its attendees. Of course, for the Lakers, they were missing Luka Doncic, the league leader in scoring this year. They were missing Austin Reeves, one of the preeminent second options in the league this year. And for Houston, a quote-unquote sprained ankle all but cost Kevin Durant the series and appears to have cost Kevin Durant his time in Houston, which is crazy to say after less than 80 games. But the Lakers getting it done and securing the win as they should, particularly with the advantages they had as far as personnel firing on all cylinders. Luke Kennard starting it hot, getting it done. I mean, the Lakers getting out to a 3-0 series lead quickly really helped. And then, of course, Houston with a couple of fight-back games. There was talk about a 3-0 recovery. It's never happened in the history of the league. The closest that it's ever been was the 1951 finals, where the New York Knicks rallied from 3-0 down to lose by 4 points in Game 7 to the Rochester Royals. It has never looked like it was going to happen at any other point ever in time, and until such time that it actually happens, I don't see it actually happening. The Lakers then won Game 6. Of course, Game 1, the Lakers defeating the Rockets 107-98. Game 2, defeating the Rockets 101-94. And Game 3, defeating the Rockets 112-108. So a couple of tighter games there. Houston, they won Game 5, 115-96 to keep it alive. They then won Game 6, 99-93. Sorry, they won Game 5, 99-93. People feeling that, maybe there was a chance of it. But the Lakers putting it to bed behind LeBron James' 28 points to win 98-78, absolutely locking down the Rockets and ending their season in a flash. LeBron, their best player in the series, and you do have to commend him for doing that there at the age of 41. 23.2 points, 7.2 rebounds, 8.3 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 4.3 turnovers. Shot 43.2% from the field, 30% from deep, and 73.9% from the free throw line. Gets the job done, and essentially put the Lakers in a commanding position to head into the second round. Injuries and all, they delivered a nice 6-game win. There is conversation of Luka Doncic coming back in the second round, but I don't see it happening, particularly if he hasn't had any movement or any sort of running or strain or pressure, so to speak, on that hamstring. I don't see him flying in and just getting a game. For Austin Reeves, good to see him back. But again, I don't think that's going to be enough considering who they're taking on. Again, talking about LeBron James, age 41, getting it done with all the minutes in the games under his belt. I do have to commend him for that effort because that Rockets team is still a pretty decent team. There's a reason they were a 5th seed and fighting for a 4th seed at times, albeit without Kevin Durant. And I mean, the guy was an all-NBA level player this year, but you do have to commend them for their effort. And of course, they're going to absolutely have to turn it on if they are going to compete with the Oklahoma City Thunder. But looking at the betting odds, and not that I'm a betting man from a basketball standpoint, I wouldn't have had the Lakers anyway. They are going to be on struggle street taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder, but it is commendable to see what they have been able to do this season, particularly in that playoff round without LeBron James. So really nice effort from them there. Without LeBron James, without Luka Doncic. I should say really nice effort, but I do think that dream run comes to an end in this next series. The next series, though, is probably the biggest upset that we've seen in the playoffs for a number of years. The Minnesota Timberwolves, without their frontline guards, including their best player, down the stretch of this series, were able to pull off at one point a 3-1 lead on the Denver Nuggets and secure a 6-game victory to move into the second round and give themselves every hope of making a conference finals after a very tight win in their first game against the Spurs today at the time of recording. Minnesota defeating the Denver Nuggets 4-2. It started okay for Denver, who got the 116-105 winning game 1, but it was all Minnesota through games 2, 3, and 4, winning 119-114 in game 2, 115-96 in game 3. 113.96 in game 3 and 112.96 in game 4 behind Desommu's 43 points. Again, factoring in that you've lost Anthony Edwards at that point, you'd also lost Dante DiVincenzo. Adding in further injury concerns there for Minnesota as well. You lose Desommu. You also managed to lose, and I'm just having a look here, Kyle Anderson was another key loss for them as well. So a big series win, particularly when they rally and win game 6, 110-98. Full credit to Rudy Gobert and the big defensive effort that he put through on that series, particularly against Jokic, and I think you can make a case that he was the best player in the series off that alone. But I do feel for a guy who talked a lot of talk, managed to walk a lot of walk and get it done, that Jaden McDaniels was the spark to that fire. In the series, 17.8 points, 6.8 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 0.5 steals and 0.7 blocks on 1.7 turnovers. Shot 49.4 from the field, only 11.1% from deep, at 81.0 from the free throw line. Closed out a massive Game 6 performance to end that series. 32 points, 10 rebounds amongst all of the numbers there to go with 3 assists, 2 steals and a block. Didn't turn the ball over, 52% from the field. Just a massive, massive series, particularly with all the talk that he talked. He walked the walk. Again, a major win for Minnesota without their stars and some big injuries there. They're likely to struggle against the loaded Spurs, but I say that after they have won that first game and restricted De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama to 10 of 31 shooting in that opening game. Neither player taking the attempted game-winning or go-ahead shot as well. So good work there by Minnesota. But I think the big call out there has to be for Rudy Gobert. Again, proving to be crucial in a playoff series against Denver and indeed to get the job done. People don't realise when you go back to Game 7 in 2024 in the conference semi-finals for Minnesota, the guy who dominated that fourth quarter on both ends of the floor and got the job done was Rudy Gobert. Now, it's not fun to say, it doesn't stand out as much to say, but the reason they won that series was Rudy Gobert. You can make a very big case right now. The reason that they won that series was because of Rudy Gobert. That's 2 out of 3 playoff series where a 4-time defensive player of the year that's ultimately discredited for a lack of offensive game is, called out upon. But really, really big series for him. Really nice finish. Jokic gone out of the playoffs. Denver gone out of the playoffs, and that opens things for them. Of course, first early win against the Spurs, super key. It's a matter of whether they're able to do that consistently moving forward. Speaking of the Spurs, they had their gentleman's sweep against the Portland Trail Blazers. The number 2 seed taking on the number 7 seed and getting it done comfortably. The only game Portland were able to get a win in was the injury game for Victor Wembanyama. He then managed to miss Game 3, which didn't matter because the Spurs were able to hold on. And again, Games 4 and 5 going to San Antonio. They won the first game 111-98. Lost Game 2 only by the 3 points, by the way, 106-103. So this very well could have been a sweep of the series. They then proceeded to lock things down over the last 3 games. In all their wins, they held Portland under 100 points 3 out of 4 occasions. This was the occasion they didn't. Game 3, 120-108. Game 4, 114-93. And Game 5, 114-95. So consistently dominating on both ends of the floor. Now, Victor Wembanyama, huge series, but he didn't play in all of the games, so I can't be giving him full credit there, even though he did average 21 points and 4 blocks. To me, De'Aaron Fox was the guy who turned up in all of those games there. Was very tough for me not to go with a Stephon Castle because he did step up when it mattered, but I just thought consistently across 5 games, De'Aaron Fox was their best player. 20.2 points, 4 rebounds, 6.8 assists, 1 steal and 0.4 blocks on 2 turnovers. 50% from the field, 37% from deep and 65% from the free throw line. A nice showing there for De'Aaron Fox. I think the Spurs are good enough to take it all away. Now, they are down a game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and as I said before, I thought it was a poor showing in Game 1 from Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox, combined for 10 of 31. Neither player looking to take the go-ahead basket to end that first game. But I do think there's enough there and plenty of signs to suggest that the Spurs can win a title. they do have a matchup advantage on potentially their next opponent if both sides get through. And even though they're young, I would back their talent against almost anyone in the league. Wemby is, right now showing himself to be the most dynamic defensive player that we've seen this side of Tim Duncan, and proving to be as dynamic of a defender probably since Hakeem Olajuwon to that level. But we are seeing how fragile he is. And one bad fall, one bad turn can be, the end of the season essentially for Wemby, and certainly potentially the end of the season for the Spurs as well, which they need to be wary of. And I think ultimately their key is going to be that they need to utilise their guard matchups against Minnesota. You've got Castle, you've got Fox, you've got Harper. There's just so much going on as far as those three leaders that they should be able to take advantage of. Other players like a Devin Vassell, that 2-3 that should be able to take advantage of that as well. Keldon Johnson, 6-man of the year. Small forward, a guy who can rotate into the 2 if they need it. I just think that's the advantage that they're going to have to take advantage of the most. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama set the playoff record for blocks in a game with 12 at the time of recording. He's clearly the outlier, but I think utilising Fox, I think utilising Harper, and I think utilising Castle is going to be their quickest route to victory in this series. And finally, we move on to the first sweep of the playoffs, and it was the number 1 seed in the league, Oklahoma City Thunder, the best record in the league, 64 wins, getting the sweep against the Phoenix Suns. They won all 4 games. They won Game 1, 119-84, really set the tone. Game 2, 120-107. Game 3, 121-109. And Game 4, 131-122. That's not to say that Phoenix just didn't put up a good effort. It really comes down to the fact that you conceded 120 points or more 3 times, almost did it 4 times, and at times struggled to put points on the board. Super simple there. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led the way in scoring in all 4 games. No shock to see that the guy who I think is going to win the MVP and very well could be winning a 3rd straight MVP if things had prevailed is, the player of the series. 33.8 points, 3.8 rebounds, 8 assists, 0.5 steals, 0.8 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. Factoring in that he shot 55.1 from the field, 89.8 from the stripe, and 31.3 from deep. Certainly not in character for him, but a really clean and easy win for the Thunder. Again, best team in the league, handled their business, got the job done. That's exactly what they needed to do. And in doing it, provided an offensive masterclass. They just poured in the points. They had options left, right, and centre. I know I've mentioned Shai Gilgeous-Alexander there, but in games played, Jalen Williams is going to be the concern as well. He will be out for a number of weeks with an injury concern there. Averaged 21, 4, and 5 in the 2 games that he did play. There's no doubt about it that he is one of the key factors for them to be able to win this title. But they just run so deep that everyone else can start contributing. Alex Caruso getting some minutes there. We know what he brings on both sides of the floor. Cason Wallace defensively, we know what he brings. Lou Dort, we know what he brings defensively as well. But you want to go back up the list. AJ Mitchell, really nice year for him as far as a 6-man, and a bit of a coming out party for him, proving that he can play. He will step up where he needs to. Isaiah Hartenstein, a really handy backup big, and of course Chet Holmgren, one of the 3 nominations for Defensive Player of the Year. Had another big run. He's going to have a nice series, you would think, to help stretch the floor and utilise his size against the Lakers. But I think Oklahoma City should be able to get the job done there. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers take a game, and it does come down to that injury for Jalen Williams, because if Austin Reeves is going to be playing, there's a bit more accountability on the defensive end. If Luka gets back, there is more accountability on the defensive end, and we saw some of the Lakers players get hot during that playoff series. So there is a little cause for concern, but I would not expect OKC to go any more than 6 games, I should say, in this series. If it gets taken to 7, I'd be shocked, but I think they get it done in 6, and I think they continue on their merry way towards the Western Conference Finals. Anyway, guys, that's been me. That's been my review for round 1 of the 2026 NBA playoffs. To summarise everything that has gone on, we'll just take a look at exactly how the playoffs have panned out through the first round. So in the 4th versus 5th in the East, it was Cleveland defeating Toronto in 7 games. In 3rd versus 6th, it was the New York Knicks defeating the Atlanta Hawks in 6 games. In the 2nd seed versus the 7th seed, it was the 3-1 recovery of the Philadelphia 76ers to defeat Boston 4-3. And the number 1 seed, Detroit Pistons, defeating the Orlando Magic after recovering from 3-1 down, winning that series in 7. Meanwhile, the Western Conference, the 4 seed Los Angeles Lakers defeating the 5th seed Houston Rockets without Luka Doncic and mainly Austin Reeves as well. Of course, the concern for Kevin Durant there, likely out for the Rockets. Moving over to the 3rd seed and the 6th seed, it was the 6th seed Timberwolves getting it done, taking as much of a 3-1 lead over Denver to close the series out in 6. When we move over to the 2nd seed versus the 7th seed, gentlemen sweep for the San Antonio Spurs, only losing the game that Victor Wembanyama was injured in 4-1. And of course, the Oklahoma City Thunder getting it done in a big sweep against the Phoenix Suns. As we move forward to the 2nd round, we already have the New York Knicks ahead of the Philadelphia 76ers 1-0, and the Minnesota Timberwolves sneaking game 1 against the Spurs 1-0. Detroit are yet to take on Cleveland. Oklahoma City yet to take on the Lakers, but that won't be too far away at all either. Anyway, guys, that's been me. That's been my review for round 1 of the 2026 NBA playoffs. I'm out.